Jesus said in John chapter 14, verse 1, he says, "Do not let your heart be troubled. Believe in God. Believe also in me." In this statement, Jesus is not saying, don't believe in God and believe in me. That's an important distinction to make. He is aligning himself with God, the Creator, and he's making himself the same, as it were, one with the Creator. He was a human in the form of a man that was God. And so he came from God and he goes back to God. What I like to say, and if you listen to me talk, if everything comes from God, then it's all got to go back to God. Think about it. If you are God and you concoct in your imagination or in your mind a city or a place or a colony of beings or a world that you want to create, then you speak it forth and do it in a human way. It breaks down because you're not God. But in the human way, you go forth and you execute a plan, and if you're successful, you reach your goal and create this colony or groups of beings that call you God. But if there's a revolt among them, and they don't even want to recognize you as their creator, and they start to take on their own plans and their own initiative to do whatever, even overthrow you, then everything has to come back to you. Because you're the creator. You could shut them down at any time. Isn't it amazing how much mercy God has with us? Because that's what we did. We were given the light of God in the idea that we were made in his image. Let us make man in our image. The ability to think and reason and create and to do what we do, think about things, worship. What more fundamental thing is it than worship? We have a desire to worship something. And most of the time we worship everything but the one we ought to worship. He says, believe in God. Believe also in me. If you're a God believer and you're not so sure about me, well, I'm telling you, if you believe in God, you will also believe in me. In my Father's house, how would Jesus know what's going on in the Father's house? Because he comes from God. He's been there. He knows exactly what his Father's house looks like. And he says, there are many dwelling places. There are many, as we say, mansion in the sky. But a dwelling place is what it says, a place of God's dwelling. A mansion is something that we create in our mind, a beautiful house with pillars in the front and stonework and big fancy windows and lentils over the windows and, gorgeous 2 or 4 seat type structure that swings off to the side with a wing. That's a mansion to us with a gorgeous landscaping and a turnaround driveway. But that's not what God's talking about. He's talking about dwelling places for you and me. For you because you love me, he's going to say. Because you believe in me, he's going to say. He says, if it were not so, I would have told you, for I go to prepare a place for you. Not a mansion for you. It's already done in one sense. But he's going to prepare a place for you. Put your name in there. I go to prepare a place for Bob or Linda or Sue or George or Tabitha. I go to prepare a place for you, Georgina, Erica, whatever. I go to prepare a place for you. For you. You and me. You and me alone, God. In the garden together. And if I go and prepare a place for you, I will come again. The fact that he is preparing a place, logically understood, means he's coming back. Why? Because in the understanding of a Hebrew wedding, I'm going to mess this up because I'm not a Jew, but when we went to Israel, they explained this to us, that here's the scene. You have this market square imagine a Middle Eastern city, stonework, and the houses are different and all that, but there's a market square and there's fun and merriment going on. Market, people are selling things, there's dancing, there's singing, there's people are blowing shofars or whatever. They're having a blessed time. They're killing the fatted calf, and the young ladies come out and they dance in the marketplace, and the older men who are still single gaze upon their dancing. and they make a decision on which one. It's kind of like if you're going to shop for a Christmas tree and you go and look at all the trees, you pick that one. Well, that's what happened with Mary and Joseph. Joseph picked a young girl, and that's why the age difference was such in Palestine, because a man had to have a dowry, had to have something to offer the bride and her father to get her. So a lot of times the men would be maybe in their mid-20s or late 20s, and the woman would be 14, 15, 16, just coming into her womanhood. And they were selected by their beauty or by their movements or whatever. But here the Lord he's selecting, in this equation, selected a people by the beauty of his Son, created by his Son. And the Son is the groom in this instance. And the Son has selected a church and made a church with his own blood. He bought it with his blood. And then what happens after that is, after the dowry is prepared, they go to prepare a honeymoon suite or a place. And the father then goes and inspects it to make sure it's okay. And then the groom is released at that point and is allowed to go get his bride and bring her back to the honeymoon place, or the dwelling place, the place of their romance. A mansion, in my mind, doesn't get it done because it's not necessarily a place of romance. It's just something of pride and, wow, look at my mansion. But what we're talking about here is intimate. It's an intimate place, a very special place. And the Lord has a very special place for you and for me because he loves us. We're his bride. I know that's hard to understand as a man. A lot easier for you women. But it's the truth nonetheless. And I go and I come to get you because my Father will look at it and say, oh, that's good enough. That's beautiful. That's a wonderful place for you to have your wedding feast or have your honeymoon. And so now that's the second return for the bride. The Lord comes for the bride, right? He goes and steals away in the middle of the night and seeks his bride. And that's the 10 virgins, 5 of which made it to the wedding feast, and 5 didn't. Isn't it clear from Scripture? Doesn't it make sense to study, the Jewishness of the Bible? Doesn't it help you interpret better? I think it does, and that's why I like to want to go back to Israel again and again and again with young people, and have the guide we had was amazing. Website is called BibleSettings.com, and Dr. Widben. Wonderful guide. But anyway, I will come again and receive you to myself. Now here, I think we're looking at the rapture because, look, think of it. If everybody wants to say, oh, well, I don't believe in a rapture. It's not in the Bible. The word rapture is not in the Bible. Okay, but it's alluded to. Does the word have the Trinity's not in the Bible? Yet we believe it, right? Because it's alluded to. There's a pluralistic God with one God. Behold, the Lord our God is God. The Lord is one. And that word Lord there is Elohim, which is the plural understanding of God, being yet one. University, diversity. University is universal oneness, yet diversity in the oneness. That's the idea. And here, he will receive them unto himself. There's no sword here. There's no vengeance. The blood of the Lord taking his vengeance out on the nations. That's the time of Jacob's trouble. That's the restoration of Israel. So the ones who believe in him, and we're going to get into the touchstone verse of this section of Scripture that everybody likes to quote. But we have to understand what leads up to that verse. And I'm seeking to do that at this time, is to establish this. I bring them to myself, to my chest, to my face, to my life, to my heart, in the human way of looking at it, to come together in an embrace. That's not talking about vengeance. That's the idea of romance. That's the idea of love and coming together, husband and wife. And where I am, there you may also be. So bride, you will always be with Jesus. Don't wonder about that. Wherever he goes, you go. Back to the earth to take vengeance out, because the bride is with him. He's wrong. He's pleased. Now, as the worker of vengeance, the righteous judge of the earth, he does his work. Like we tend to the flock, or we till the ground, or we manage a company, or pastor a church. That's our work. And his work is vengeance. His work